So one of the key things I think is often misunderstood is actually what is business strategy? What is it that we're actually looking to do? And why is it important to kind of get right? I've mentioned this in previous weeks, but it's almost, I just want to reiterate it now, just in case someone just catches this kind of new. So essentially in a business, there are different decisions that you can make to help grow the business. All on their own, to be honest, could be perfectly valid decisions. So if you have some spare cash, do you invest in more stock to sell? Do you hire someone? Do you put it into sales and marketing? Do you invest in a new app? Do you give it away to charity? There are lots of decisions that actually on their own can make kind of perfect sense. What good strategy does is actually help align those decisions. So basically for your organization or charity or whatever it is, if you really know what your goal and mission is, you can actually help make better decisions to actually help you get to where you want to be. Prime example. So two identical businesses, well, business A and business B. Business A might go about its day-to-day activities, doing stuff, and actually they make each decision at the time based on what they think is the right thing to do. So actually, you've got some spare money there, you're a bit overworked. Actually, we could do an extra pair of hands. Okay, let's recruit someone, which pulls them in that direction. But then something else comes up and they think, well, actually, I still like the sound of building an app and really getting more customers, so we'll do that one. And then actually, where's the money going to come from? We could work harder and sell more to get the cash in, or we could just raise finance, etc. And all three of those decisions are actually perfectly good, valid kind of decisions. But the question is, and the whole point of having strategy is to really understand where you are now, where you want to get to, and then pick decisions which align with your strategy. So almost if you take company B, the more you can understand about where you are now. So I'm going to use the roadmap as an example. I've done a lot of homework on my competitors, the market, what I think customers want, how they want it delivered, etc. And I've spoken about this in the past, but almost one of the big things for me is that it's been well proven that you have literally billion-dollar turnover companies that do online education and they lose hundreds of millions of pounds or dollars every year because it's really difficult to do and actually just make kind of profitable. And the more I've kind of looked at it for my own kind of business model, the USP is actually having really low overheads. And why that's really important is, for one, it's incredibly difficult to copy. Yes, it's harder to get up and running, but actually if you can, you'll be in a much better place. And I've done all the maths and all of the kind of study in something called Blue Ocean Strategy, which we've talked about. But for me, the crux of my business being successful or not often comes down to low overheads. So actually, through looking at the market and understanding what makes me special, what makes the roadmap different, the way for me to compete is that if I did what everyone else does, raise money, get a big team, sign up 1 million customers or 40 million customers and charge £2,000 a course, that's what everyone else does. And I know from looking at the market that it doesn't really work, just because one of my biggest competitors, who are a company called 2u.com, on their website, they have to give all of their investor kind of feedback and stuff. Basically, yeah, they lost $210 million this year. They're expected to lose 220 million next year, and they've lost money every year since they launched in 2014. So I know that that basic structure doesn't really work, and they have 42 million registered users, 2,000 universities or colleges that they do their online education for. So me, as my strategy to copy model A just isn't going to work. I kind of know that. So part of my strategy and what bases all my decisions on is actually, if I can make the business work but based on low overheads, what can I do? So coming back to the same kind of three decisions, if I have some spare money, I could invest in a team and grow the business, but actually it's going to increase overhead, so it's taking me away from my competitive position. I can put that same balance, if that makes sense, into something like an app, which is growth and scalable, where as long as it'll take, it's live and it's up to standard, it doesn't actually increase my long-term fixed costs. So actually, I'll take that decision. One of the big ones I've been struggling with, because it is the harder way to do it, is that if I raise finance, so I go out and borrow or get equity investment of £300,000, don't get me wrong, it'd be very kind of welcome, but the issue is then the investors, rightly so, would want their return on the money. That actually, a big part of my growth plan is to do a freemium model, to basically give free business education to the world. And again, part of the reason for doing that is that if all of the competition is struggling to make money, charging thousands of dollars and doing it that way, the way to completely pivot and compete against it is actually to really go the freemium model. And that's what people like Duolingo do, where actually they're valued at $6 billion now, and it's a way that they teach languages. They actually do the freemium with paid ads. I'm not planning to do that, but the point is, so actually I could make the decision to raise investment, but it's going to take me away from the strategy. So actually I'm going to do it the harder way, but actually to bootstrap it and do it myself. And then last but not least, one of the other big things is when you look at these really big organizations, they take a really long time to make decisions and improve content and whatever. And actually the fact that I do it live and I use the internet and write most of the stuff myself and present it myself, I can actually react and be nimble because, again, I don't have a team. I don't have to consult anyone. But what you then have between A and B, if you have a good strategy, all of your decisions can move towards and pull you towards the goal, which will actually make you successful in the end, versus just making decisions which are all still good decisions, but they don't really align in a particular direction. And I just wanted to kind of talk about that. But the reason, again, why I wanted to kind of do it now is that there's a lot of change going on in the world. We have, obviously, the war in Ukraine, which is really sad. Interest rates are going up. American government is borrowing, I think it's always at $1.5 trillion economic stimulation. But there's a lot of stuff that I'm worried about that could impact the market. And actually, it could be that it's harder to raise finance. Your staff costs go up because people can't pay their wages. And I think the business environment will just get harder and harder and harder. So one of the things I wanted to talk about now is something almost nobody ever kind of talks about. So if you go today, so this is today's date, imagine the timeline. If you speak to most kind of consultants or webinars or whatever, what they say is go and do more marketing or more sales to grow the business. So you're here today, do sales and marketing to then grow more, do more, sell more, etc. But the one thing that I think most people get wrong is that very few people actually step back to actually look back. Is what we're doing actually the right thing to do, the best thing to do? Could we pivot? Could we iterate? Could we change our actual business model? Because actually, if you can get your strategy right, in the same example I did here, that if it's not as good as it could be, you're almost running into the wind. You've got a really difficult position that actually, unless you have some clear differentiator against competition, you can do more sales and marketing, but it's going to be a much harder gig. Actually, if you can really review your strategy, make sure that everything you're doing is as good as it can be, you then have more confidence as you kind of go forward. So one of the things that we talk about on the roadmap, and basically what we do is that we walk you through all of the things to consider to really help align your thinking for your own business or your own career. For one, so you know in which direction you're kind of starting to pull. But actually, if we can make your life easier and make your business fundamentally better, more secure, more efficient, more aligned to the customer, then when we do more sales and marketing, it'll be so much more successful than if we don't do this bit, and most people don't, and they just try and do more. It's often a tough kind of gig.